We are talking 76ers trade rumors because the NBA trade deadline is tomorrow. Welcome into Sixers Now. Matthew Peterson here filling in for Chase Sr., who is a part of the Chat Sports Super Bowl delegation. We have lots to talk about on today's show. But before we jump into the latest surrounding your Philadelphia 76ers, if you know a Sixers fan who is kind of the dumb one at the water cooler, who's on your school bus and has no idea what's going on, share this video with them, enlighten them a little bit more on the latest on your Philadelphia 76ers. But we do have some new trade rumors to get to on today's show, as NBA Insider from Yahoo Sports, Jake Fischer, reported that the Sixers are targeting Buddy Hield and Bojan Bogdanovic. So let's talk about these two potential trade targets for Nick Nurse's Sixers. Let's start with Buddy Hield, and let's go right to the horse's mouth, because this is what Jake Fischer wrote. Philadelphia is exploring conversations with a variety of teams, but one known target for the Sixers is Pacers guard Buddy Hield, league sources told Yahoo Sports. Hield's $18.5 million salary would be a match for several of the Sixers' expiring contracts, and his expiring deal wouldn't add future financial burden onto Philadelphia's clean cap sheet for this offseason, as the Sixers have left rival teams with the impression they are still wary of taking back long-term salary at this juncture. So let's talk about Buddy Hield. He was a part of that Sabonis trade that sent him to Indiana and Sabonis over to Sacramento. And I thought in his first year with Indiana, he played pretty well. This season, it hasn't been as graceful. Only 12 points per game. He's shooting a nice 44% from the field, solid three-point percentage-ish at 38, but he's ultimately been a victim of the Rick Carlisle rotation, which doesn't necessarily allow guards to flourish all that much under his parameters. I do think he would be a perfect option for the Sixers. Of course, with Joel Embiid missing at least the next month, it's a little gray in terms of how long he will be out for. Philadelphia, if they want to be contenders in the East, they cannot sit on their hands. And this would be a relatively splash trade for Nick Nurse's Sixers. Now, Philadelphia this season, if we're talking about three-point shooting percentage, well, they're only making about 11.5 three-pointers per game. That is near the bottom of the association. Meanwhile, Buddy Hield this season, he's making a little over 2.5 three-pointers in a rotation that he doesn't see a ton of minutes, right? And he's still 26 in the NBA, which, by the way, would be second on the 76ers. So if you bring him over to Philadelphia, you pump him full of minutes, you could see some more productivity than what you're currently seeing out of him in Indiana. But I do want to get your opinion on this. Is Buddy Hield a good fit on the Sixers? Obviously, this is not a move to try and replace Joel Embiid for a playoff push, or at least to hold down the fort if Joel Embiid could return for the playoffs. But this would be a move to improve your guard play and add more depth at that spot, because maybe Philly tries to pivot a little bit what their strategy is without the 35-point per game Embiid. But let me know with a G for good or B for bad. Now, next up on the show, we're going to talk about Bojan Bogdanovic from the Detroit Pistons and whether or not this would be a good trade target for Philadelphia. But first, I do have to give a quick shout out to our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Prize Picks, give me 60 seconds to catch you up to speed on them. It's really simple stuff. You pick 2 to 6 players, and then all you do is choose more or less. Now, there are, of course, plenty of NBA games to select from, but there is this big game on Sunday you might have heard of where Patrick Mahomes is taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And call me crazy, but I like the more on Patrick Mahomes is passing yards at 0.5. They're just giving that one to you. And then you just got to make one more selection, and you are home free. So I like the more on Isaiah Pacheco at half a rushing or receiving touchdown. And then I like the more on Brock Purdy's passing yards at 248.5. So if you like my selections and you want to have some extra skin in the game this Sunday, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS. And when you do that, you're going to get a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, I've put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Now let's talk about our friend from across the pond, Bojan Bogdanovic, and whether or not this would be a good fit for Philadelphia and how truly interested they are in number 44. Because here's what Jake Fischer wrote. Another target for the Sixers is Pistons guard Bojan Bogdanovic, sources said, who is on the books for $20 million this season, but has just $2 million guaranteed for 2024 to 2025. Detroit has long shown an interest in a reunion with Tobias Harris, league sources told Yahoo Sports, but in any deal where the Sixers bring back Bogdanovic, it would seem Philadelphia doesn't want to part ways with Harris. Now, the Pistons have been an absolute disaster this year. We know that. They have 6 wins so far. They are the worst team in the NBA. But Bogdanovic has not been the number one problem in the Motor City. He's averaging 20 points per game through 28 games so far this year, shooting better than Buddy Hield at 3 and from the floor 46 and 41%. However, I'm not interested in trading Tobias Harris for Bogdanovic. Has Tobias Harris maybe been a tad underwhelming at times? Sure, I'm not going to argue with on that, but I'm not interested in parting ways with Harris. However, if you could maybe get Robert Covington and some change at the end of your bench over to Detroit, yeah, I'm in. That's a trade I can get behind. But Tobias for Bogdanovic, I'm sure there'd be some other nuances to it. That just surface level, pass. But Robert Covington this season, yeah, obviously this one kind of speaks for itself, but this would be a trade I could get behind if that means bringing over another veteran depth piece, because again, I'm not quite sure if Philadelphia thinks they can find a temporary Joel Embiid replacement. I don't think they can, but maybe what they can do is they can find some good, well-rounded ball players to just keep things afloat while they sit right there in the middle of the 1 through 8 seed in the East until Joel Embiid returns. Also, it's worth noting, Detroit just made a trade, which might not seem like that implicates the Sixers at all, but it does have a ripple-down effect. So, allow me to explain. We had Woj tweet out the news that the Utah Jazz are trading Simone Fontecchio to the Detroit Pistons for a 2024 second-round pick. Why does that matter? Well, let me tell you why. Because, as Brett Siegel pointed out, this is a very interesting move, especially because it opens up the door for Bojan Bogdanovic to be moved. The Pistons just traded for a player that plays the same spot, the same position on the floor as Bogdanovic, which could open up a trade for him to, I don't know, say a team like the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we also have trade-initis going around across the league with the deadline coming up tomorrow because, surprise, surprise, Marcus Morris woke up today and his foot wasn't feeling too well, right? And same goes for House Jr. So both those players are questionable, which means maybe Philly is shutting them down because they don't want them to actually get hurt if they are currently in the works of trading one of them for, say, a certain shooter from the Detroit Pistons. I think something is coming. I do think Philadelphia feels a little bit of pressure, of course. They've got to find a way to keep the boat moving until Joel Embiid can return, and the NBA trade deadline comes at a perfect time to do that. So let me know, will the Sixers trade for Bogdanovic? Yes or no? Don't be afraid to shoot your shot down below in the comment section. Don't be like a certain someone else who's afraid to shoot at the court. All right, one more trade rumor to get to today. How about an Andre Drummond trade from the Chicago Bulls? So NBA Insider Marc Stein reported that the Sixers are interested in Andre Drummond, and here's what Stein had to say. The Sixers, I'm told, have indeed registered interest in Chicago's Andre Drummond, joining the likes of Boston and Dallas. Drummond is widely regarded as the most likely Bull to be traded this week after literally months of trade speculation in the Windy City. Now, when you look at the numbers for Drummond this year, obviously, they aren't what they used to be when he was an all-star with the Pistons, but he has been primarily a bench player the last 2 seasons for Chicago. He's made a couple of starts this year to fill in for injuries here and there, but he's been very effective when on the court. He's not playing the same type of minutes that he used to, but when he's out there, he's still a really good defender, and he's still one hell of a rebounder, and he can have some nice finishes near the rim as well. And then you take into account the Sixers' lack of size and rebounding, and Drummond fits this need perfectly for Philadelphia. Now, the ultimate wrench is The Chicago Bulls front office, they have just lived an opposite world for the last 2 years. When you think they're going to be sellers, they don't. When you think they might be buyers, they don't. So if you think, and they should be sellers this trade deadline, well, just do the opposite because that's what they're doing in Chicago. So pick one guy to trade for. Buddy Hield, Bojan Bogdanovic, or Andre Drummond, right? Do you want a guard? Do you want a forward? Do you want a center? Or kind of an in-betweener, if you will? Let me know down below in the comment section which of these 3 players you would love to see Philly trade for. Make sure to subscribe, and most importantly, turn on your noties because the NBA trade deadline is tomorrow. And there's nothing better than being that first guy in the friend group to say, oh my God, you see who the Sixers trade for? And if you got your noties on, you won't be the last.